The keys don't fit in your pocket the way you thought they would. That's the first thing. They're heavier than they look. This fat brass cluster the seller's agent hands you in the parking lot of a title company in suburban Columbus, and you stand there holding them while your wife signs the last page on the hood of the car because the printer inside jammed. Dana laughs. You don't, yet. You're doing math. You're always doing math. $60,000, gone, vaporized into a wire transfer that left your checking account looking like a stranger's. The number that had taken 6 years to build, the number you'd refreshed on the Fidelity app so many times your thumb knew the gesture without your brain, is now a doormat and a roof and a 30-year obligation with the word fixed in it, which you will later learn is the funniest word in finance. You are 31. You make $94,000 a year as a mechanical engineer at a mid-size HVAC manufacturer, which means you understand systems, you understand load and failure, and the slow accumulation of stress fractures, and somehow none of that prepared you for this. But wait, back up, because there's a version of this morning where you don't sign. Let me show you both. Not the fantasy version, the real one, with the numbers people leave out of the arguments they have on the internet at midnight. Here's the fork. It's a Tuesday in spring. You and Dana, she's a pediatric nurse, 12-hour shifts, comes home smelling like hand sanitizer and other people's worst days. You've got $60,000 and a decision. Door 1, a 3-bedroom in a decent school district, $340,000, 20% down, the rest on a 30-year fixed at the rates of that particular year, call it roughly 7%. Door 2, you keep renting the 2-bedroom you're in for $1,850 a month, and you take that $60,000, and instead of burying it in a foundation, you feed it to the S&P 500, and you never stop feeding it. Most people never even see Door 2. It's not that they reject it, it's that it was never offered. Your father offered you Door 1 before you could legally drink. Rent is throwing money away, he said, every Thanksgiving, carving the turkey like he was making a point with the knife. You believed him because he believed it, and because he was the kind of man you wanted to nod at. So you sign. Path A. We'll come back for the other one. The mortgage is $2,261 a month on the loan itself, principal and interest, which already stings because your rent was $400 less than that. But here's the part your father never carved into the turkey. That's not the payment. The payment is a costume the real number wears. Property taxes in your county run about 1.5% of the home's value annually. That's another $425 a month, climbing every reassessment. Homeowners insurance, another $140. And then the thing nobody puts on the Zillow listing, the silent tax, maintenance. The rule of thumb is 1 to 2% of the home's value every year, forever. On a $340,000 house, call it $3,000 to $6,000 annually that the house simply takes from you. Sometimes in a slow drip, sometimes in a single afternoon when the words, your furnace, and cracked heat exchanger arrive in the same sentence. You, the HVAC engineer, find it deeply funny that the first thing to die is the furnace. The dog finds the contractor's invoice first and chews the corner off it. You don't even get mad. You just look at it, this gnawed piece of paper with a 4-figure number on it, and you think, I own this now. The house, the bill, the dog who eats the bill, all of it. The first year you tell yourself the equity is the point. And it's true that some of that $2,261 is going into your own pocket, except in year 1. Of a 30-year loan at 7%, look at the amortization schedule and try not to flinch. Of your first full year of payments, roughly $23,500 goes to interest, the bank's money, gone the same way rent is gone, except you call it something nobler. About $4,000 actually reduces what you owe. That's the secret the word fixed is hiding. For the first decade, you are mostly renting money from a bank, and the rent on money is called interest, and it is not cheaper than the rent on an apartment. It is just less honest about what it is. And then there's Marcus. Marcus is your college roommate, software, fully remote, the kind of guy who says, I did the math, and actually did. Same crossroads, same spring. Marcus took Door 2. He kept renting a 1-bedroom he didn't even like, put the $60,000 into a total market index fund, set up an automatic transfer, and, this is the part that matters, invested the difference. Every month, the gap between what a mortgage would have cost him and what rent actually cost him, he invested that too. Roughly $900 a month on top of the lump sum, swallowed whole by the market and never seen again. You think he's making a mistake. You'll spend 3 Thanksgivings sure of it. By the time you hit the 10-year check-in, here's where you stand. Your house has appreciated appreciated. Real estate nationally has historically returned somewhere in the ballpark of 4% a year before costs, and your market did a little better, so the $340,000 house is now worth maybe $470,000 on a good appraisal. You've paid down the loan to around $234,000. On paper, your equity is real money. Call it $230-some thousand of net worth standing in your own driveway. Refresh the number. It feels good. It feels like your father was right, and you can finally stop doing the math at red lights. Except the math doesn't stop. It never stops. Because over those 10 years, you didn't just pay the mortgage. You replaced the roof, $11,000. You replaced the furnace, and then 2 summers later, the AC, call it 14 between them. The water heater, the fence after the storm, the property taxes that climbed every single year because the same appraisal that made you feel rich also made the county feel generous with your money. Add the interest you poured into the bank's foundation. Run it all honestly, and your house, the appreciating asset, has also been an appliance that eats. You are richer than you were. You are not as rich as the number in the driveway says. And Marcus invested $60,000 at the start, and the S&P 500 has returned historically around 10% annually with dividends reinvested. Call it 7% after you strip out inflation, but let's stay in nominal dollars to keep it fair to your house, which we measured in nominal dollars too. That $60,000 left alone for 10 years becomes roughly $155,000, but he didn't leave it alone. He fed it $900 a month, every month. $108,000 of his own dollars dripped in over the decade, and compounding turns that stream into something close to $200,000 more on top. Run the whole machine, and Marcus is sitting somewhere north of $350,000 in a brokerage account. He's beating you. At year 10, the renter is beating the homeowner, and he's beating you by $100,000, and he can sell any share of it on a Tuesday afternoon from his phone while you cannot sell your kitchen. This is the part of the argument the internet loves. This is where Marcus would win the comment section. But the comment section has never met Marcus at year 11, because here's what the spreadsheet doesn't have a sell for. Marcus's landlord sells the building, 60 days to vacate. The new owner is renovating, which is a word that means the rent is about to become a different rent. Marcus moves. Then his next lease isn't renewed either, because the market discovered his neighborhood. In 3 years, he moves twice, and each time his rent ratchets up, because the one number that doesn't stay fixed for the renter is the one the homeowner locked in on a car hood in a title company parking lot. Your $2,261 is the same in year 10 as it was in year 1. Marcus's $1,850 became $2,300, became $2,650, and the gap he was investing, the whole engine of his strategy, got smaller every year that rent rose to meet it. You text him a photo of your unchanging mortgage statement. He texts back a screenshot of his brokerage balance. Neither of you is wrong. That's what nobody tells you about this fight. You can both be holding a winning hand and still be playing different games. 20-year check-in. Dana's hair has gray in it now, and so does yours, and you stop noticing exactly when. The house is worth maybe $640,000. The mortgage is down to around $140,000. Your equity is real and large, and it has done something quietly violent to your behavior. You stopped checking the Fidelity app because the house became the plan, and the plan didn't need checking. It just needed to be lived inside of. There's a forced savings inside a mortgage that no index fund can replicate, because you cannot skip a payment the way you can skip a transfer. The market never knocks on your door. The bank does. For a man who understands stress fractures but not always discipline, that knock was worth more than you'll ever admit. Marcus, meanwhile, did something at year 14 that the rent and invest crowd never mentions in the thread. The market dropped 30-some% in a matter of months, the way it does roughly once a decade, and his $300,000 account became a $190,000 account on a Wednesday. And he did the thing almost everyone does and almost no spreadsheet models. He got scared, and he sold some, near the bottom, to feel safe. The strategy works perfectly on paper because paper doesn't have a heartbeat. Marcus has a heartbeat. So do you. The single greatest variable in this entire comparison was never the rate of return. It was whether the human being could hold the position when holding hurt. Your house never asked you to be brave. It just sat there appreciating while you slept, and you couldn't panic sell it at 2 a.m. even if you wanted to. And that prison was also a kind of protection. Here's the screenshot line, the one you'll think about in the shower for a year. A house forces you to keep your money. The market dares you to lose your nerve. Most people lose their nerve. So who wins at 30 years? The honest answer is the one that makes everyone in the comments furious, because it doesn't hand either side the trophy. By year 30, your mortgage is gone, paid. The house is worth somewhere around $820,000, and you owe nothing on it. And your housing cost for the rest of your life is just taxes, insurance, and the appliances that eat. Marcus, if he had been a robot, would have had more. The math, run clean, with discipline that no human reliably has, gives the edge to renting and investing by a margin that's real but smaller than its evangelist's claim, because they always forget the maintenance, the transaction costs, the rising rent, and the human heartbeat. Run it with the actual Marcus, the one who moved 4 times and sold at the bottom, and once spent a windfall on a boat, and the house wins quietly, the way a slow runner wins by never stopping. But that was never the real question. The real question arrives on a Sunday in the 30th year, and it has nothing to do with the spreadsheet. You're standing in the kitchen, the one you couldn't sell on a Tuesday, the one that held you in place, and you realize you can hear how quiet the house is. Your daughter learned to walk in the hallway you refloored at a 40% markup because you didn't know what you were doing. Your son's height is penciled on the doorframe of the laundry room in marks that climb and then stop, because at 15 he stopped letting you measure him, and you never sanded those marks off, and now the wall is the only place a version of him that small still exists. Marcus, who is fine, who is genuinely fine, who has more liquid money than you and can move to Lisbon next week if he wants, called last month from a rental with a view, and somewhere in the conversation he went quiet and said he wished he had a door frame. That's the cost no path priced in, not the rent, not the interest, the 30 years of penciled marks you can only make on a wall you're allowed to keep. And here is the part the argument will never settle, the open question you'll carry. You don't know, you genuinely do not know, whether you stayed in this house because it was the smarter investment, or because somewhere along the way you confused being unable to leave with being home. You're still not sure those are different things. You're not sure they were ever supposed to be. Dana finds you in the kitchen, asks what you're doing standing there in the dark. You almost say math. You've said it for 30 years. This time you say something else, and you watch her face change, and you realize you don't actually know what your number was supposed to buy you until right.